have a friend who is a very die-hard, old-school lover of books. She belongs to a book club, and none of them like to use any technology if they don't have to. They only read hardback books, they don't have smartphones, and they even refuse to read books written after World War II. There is a social worker who absolutely loves to demonstrate her power and authority by purposely destroying families. She visited a family with 3 kids that were doing absolutely nothing wrong. The family had been a victim of a false report by an angry neighbor who didn't like the color of their house. But since the father was giving the social worker what she described as a dirty look, she decided to use her authority to break apart the family. The 3 kids were all sent to different foster homes, and they were all abused and murdered because of it. There is an ancient group of families that has been tightly concentrated since before the Middle Ages. If anybody ever finds out about this family, they either have to marry into the family, swear an oath of allegiance, or they are murdered. They don't want to rule or gain power. They only want to increase their financial holdings so they can pretend the outside world doesn't exist. Because they have been doing this for over 1,000 years, they are worth over $1 trillion, even though nobody knows they exist. Some skeletons were recently found in the local hills, and authorities believe these are from a death-suicide murder cult they've been looking for several decades. They started way back during the Middle Ages after searching for a few decades for a way to cheat death. And they did find a way to cheat death, but it came with certain costs. The only way to gain access to the secret of directed reincarnation was to first go through a death ceremony. Being murdered by the cult is the only way to join this cult. And every other life you live after that, you have to be murdered. Otherwise, you'll lose your ability to consciously reincarnate. Whether you are murdered or not, once you join the cult, you can choose which type of person you want to be in the next life. You can regain all your memories from the previous lives. You can become whatever you want, man, woman, with whatever characteristics you want, looks, physical abilities, intelligence, etc. For your non-murdered life, you can do whatever you want. But for your murdered life, you live like a king or a queen or a god or a prince or a princess. For the first 30 years, you are treated like absolute royalty. Whatever you ask of anybody within the cult, they have to do that for you, short of death. Anybody you ask for sex, for example, has to willingly and obediently please you in any sexual way you desire, and everything you ask of your cult brothers and sisters has to be given to you. But when it comes time to die, when you are 33 years old, the death is agonizingly slow and painful. Every time they murder somebody, they make the death as long and as painful as possible, up to 6 months of daily and exquisite torture. If you beg for early release, they will kill you immediately, but you'll be dead for all eternity. But if you can manage to withstand the torture, you can live again in anybody you like. Most everybody chooses to marry into the cult. Very few don't. They are given a choice, and they are completely open about it. And they fully explain the murder is only to keep their family secret. If they accept marriage, they get full access to all their wealth. They just have to swear to secrecy. After the 3 children died, they found each other in the afterlife. They decided to get revenge on the social worker. Whenever she falls asleep, as soon as she passes from a waking state to a sleeping state where you're unconscious, you hear a very loud bang. Then the 3 murdered children are standing there staring. It is impossible to sleep even under heavy sedation. Now this social worker is confined in a mental institution, and whenever she crosses from consciousness to unconsciousness, she hears the loud bang and she sees the children standing and staring. And when she finally dies, which will be very soon, the children will never release her from their angry stare. Sometimes they have parties and they play lots of normal party games. But in all these normal party games, they are all played through the books they've been reading. Sometimes they are so focused, the characters actually become real and join their party. They often form teams, book readers versus imaginary characters, and they play games like charades, Pictionary, and other other party games, most of the time the fictional characters win, even though they don't exist.